I'm Charlie Stevens, and I'm going to take you through New York City's neighborhoods that are rapidly evolving to learn the history of the area and meet with the innovative business leaders that have shaped the city. We'll hear their journey to success and pick up on some tips along the way. It's time to get inspired and grow.
This is New York City Culture.
Gonna get up and go. This is culture.
We're in Silicon Alley, New York City, which was coined the name in the 1990s during the dot-com boom. Today, it's the area considered of Madison Square Park, Flatiron, down the venture capital corridor of Lower Fifth Avenue and Broadway into Union Square, where the New York City Tech Hub is going to be, down through Greenwich Village, home of Facebook and NYU, Astor Place, home of IBM's Watson, into Soho, and let's not forget about Meatpacking District, home of Google. The area has attracted over 500,000 tech employees, billions in venture capital investments, and is home of New York City's best engineers, innovators, and entrepreneurs. Today we're going to meet with Jason Feifer, head of Entrepreneur Magazine, editor-in-chief. Let's go. Today we got Jason Feifer, editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. He's the host of 2 podcasts, keynote speaker, published author of Mr. Nice Guy. Welcome to the Culture Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, let's go back to where you started the newspaper, which seems like, you want to build up the ladder or go up. I mean, you went to Fast Company, ESPN Magazine, New York Times, Maxim. I mean, you kept on elevating your game. Can you tell us maybe some memories or stories of that journey and how you kind of built up to where you are now, an editor-in-chief?
To me, I attribute my success to 2 decisions that I made that were both kind of the same decision that I just did twice. So I started out at a community newspaper, small town, Gardner, Massachusetts, daily newspaper, 6,000 circulation, covering like nothing for nobody because it was just, I didn't love it. I was writing about nothing. I was covering I did a whole series on the local diners because there's just nothing else to write about. I had this insight, which sounds super obvious, but when you're smack in the middle of it, maybe it wasn't, which was that if I wanted to write for the New York Times, there was literally no chance that anybody at the New York Times, the people that I wanted to work with, the people who I wanted to hire me, no chance that those people were ever picking up my little newspaper and reading the story by Jason Feifer about the local diner and saying, you know what, we got to hire this guy. That was never going to happen. And so I had to go to them. I could not wait for people to come to me.
Did you see the story about the waffle fries?
Yeah, never. No, they didn't see the story about the waffle fries. They will never see it, right? You have to go to them. You can't just sit around being like, I'm awesome and I'll be recognized for my talent. It doesn't work that way. So I quit. And I sat in my bedroom for 9 months in this tiny little apartment in rural Massachusetts next to a graveyard. And I just pitched. I just pitched into the darkness. I came up with story ideas and I emailed editors that I didn't know. And after 9 months of that, I had gotten a few stories in the Washington Post and the Boston Globe and Salon, a couple other places, and it felt really good, but it wasn't really making me a lot of money. I was very lonely, and so I took another community newspaper job, but I kept doing it. Right now I knew, what, I can do both at the same time. I can work this job, make some money, but at the same time, keep going at it, keep going improving myself. And after about 3 years of doing that, and now at this local newspaper, maybe less than 3 years, 2 years, I was doing some regular work for Boston Magazine. And I saw that somebody higher up on the masthead was leaving, somebody lower on the masthead was going to be moving up, and that meant that there was an entry-level position, and damn it was going to be mine. And so I quit again. I quit the second newspaper, and I moved to Boston, and I got this expensive apartment in Boston, and I told the editor-in-chief of Boston Magazine that I was ready for him to hire me. And he did. And that is what changed my... Well, it's it's what you need to do.
Right.
It's what you need to do to actually go and seize something. You cannot wait for somebody to just be like, that person. You go to them and you show you that you're not fucking around. And so that's what I did, and it worked out. And if it didn't, I have absolutely no idea I didn't have a plan B, but it worked. And I attribute everything that followed from those decisions.
You just came out with this book, Mr. Nice Guy. Published author, co-wrote it with your wife.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
How was it working with your wife?
It was great working with my wife. Yeah, so I mean, the context here, just in case people don't know, is So I wrote this novel with my wife. It's called Mr. Nice Guy. It's a romantic comedy. It's fiction. It is set in the world of New York media, which we both know very well. And it's about two people who each week sleep together and then critically review each other's performance in a magazine. Okay. So it was an idea that I had in my 20s that I just couldn't figure out how to write. Yeah. And I eventually asked my wife if she just wanted to write it, and because she's a novelist. And she said, let's do it together. And so we spent about 3+ years writing it together. It was really great. My number one tip, if you're going to work together with someone, especially someone who you're close to, distinct roles and responsibilities. Okay, so you should know going into the project what each person is responsible for and what their strengths are and how those two combine. So Jen and I split up this work. We didn't like watch each other over each other's shoulders while we were writing, right? That would have been insane making. Instead, Jen is really good at narrative and character development, and I have a magazine background, so I'm one of the things that I've done many times in my life is I've written magazine columns. The columns that the characters write, because I said it's about two people who each week sleep together and critically review each other's performance in a magazine. The columns that the characters write are in the book. So I wrote all those, and Jen wrote the narrative stuff, and then we would switch places and we would edit each other's stuff. Like, we knew what each other was doing and how it all fit together, and that way there's never a question of is somebody slacking, is somebody not prioritizing. You know what you two are bringing to it. And also when you have distinct roles and responsibilities, you can defer to each other. Like there's a CEO of a different place, right? So like Jen was the CEO of narrative and character development. I was the CEO of the columns and like things that happen in the journalism world. So like when we would have a disagreement, we would know who kind of has the ultimate final say.
Let's talk about entrepreneurship is an attitude.
I've
heard you say, it's an attitude. There's the energy you're trying to harness.
So mentality.
Yes, the mentality, and you're trying to harness the culture of entrepreneurship. What is the culture of entrepreneurship, and what are you trying to build as the culture?
Well, so, I think that the culture of entrepreneurship is just a culture of people who are determined to make things happen for themselves. If you could do anything else, go do that. Because that's easier than entrepreneurship, right?
Well, less stress.
It's less stress, right? It's less sacrifice, it's less time. Go do that. But entrepreneurs have looked at that equation and said, nope, the only thing I am satisfied doing is this insane, difficult quest. That is it. It is a culture of people who have selected the hard road. They're not bitching about the hard road, they're acknowledging the challenges with the hard road, but they chose the hard road. And that is what makes people an entrepreneur.
What's the culture at the magazine that you're trying to instill with your team and your group to build everyone around you?
I want my team to feel, first and foremost, empowered. Okay. We make a magazine in a different way than we had ever made magazines before. And my team is largely made up of people who I've worked with in the past because it's a really small team. Like, people would be shocked to know how few people actually make this magazine. It is not many. I always want us to feel like, you know what? Screw everything that we came from. Screw every way that we learned how to do something. If there is a better way, let's do it.
The keynote speaking, I thought it was really interesting that you talk about the theory of interlocking parts. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So we've done some interlocking parts right here, right now, but of course nobody would ever know, which is the beauty of it. So this came to me when I was starting to get invitations to speak at events, which really happened when I became editor-in-chief of this magazine. And I was like, what do I do? What do I do? And then I thought of my father-in-law. And my father-in-law spent 25 years in the State Department and is now at a think tank. He's an expert in Mideast foreign policy. And I've seen him speak many times. A lot of his time is traveling around speaking at very big events. He's a sought-after speaker. And I've seen him speak a lot of times, and I've seen that he repeats himself quite a lot, but it's never the same talk. And I thought, what is Aaron doing? His name is Aaron David Miller. What is Aaron doing? And I realized that what Aaron is doing is that he has functionally developed a menu of 5-minute bits in his head right? A story and a takeaway, an idea and an insight, like whatever. He's developed these things, and he seamlessly kind of moves in and out of them as he needs to. And whenever, if he's on CNN and anybody asks him a question, he can default to one of those ideas, and he can just sort of structure it for whatever the purpose is, right? So I realized that to be a speaker is really to have a menu of interlocking parts, 5-minute interlocking parts in your head. Pieces that just can go together in whatever order you need them to, and you can customize them as you do. And the larger your menu is, the more versatile a speaker you are. And so when I get on stage now at an event, I can just think through really quickly, okay, I'll talk about this thing, and then I'll go to this thing, and then I'll tell this bit, and then I'll do that. These are all things that I have in my head, and therefore I don't have to memorize anything, ever. Because the worst thing that you can do as a speaker is try to memorize something word for word, because the second that you trip up, you're lost. And also, you will always look like you're reading something in your head instead of actually speaking to somebody. So what you need is something that just feels authentic to you, that you know well enough that you can just speak it, that you can also kind of jazz improv with it as you need to. And I am always, always, always looking for additional interlocking parts. So sometimes when I'm interviewing somebody and somebody says something to me, I'll think that's the seed of an interlocking part, and I'll think about it a little bit more. I actually have an Evernote folder called interlocking parts. I'll just like throw it in there.
Another thing that's valuable is podcasting. Culture podcast. You get 2 podcasts.
I do.
Yourself. Problem Solvers is one of them.
Yeah.
And I want to kind of talk about, so you're interviewing entrepreneurs and kind of understanding how they overcome obstacles.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So, is there a common theme that you see with those, I guess founders or entrepreneurs that are getting over that hump or beating that obstacle
Yeah, I mean, the most common theme, maybe this is almost too basic to say, but I think that it's worth saying, is that they didn't see it coming, right? That you have to go into business knowing that you're going to run into problems that you don't see coming. And so what the best entrepreneurs do, the ones who I think ultimately do succeed, is that they know that they can't set themselves up to address problems that they can't predict, but they need to set themselves up to be nimble enough that they can evolve and change as they need to.
We already kind of talked about your ethos, but you mentioned you had another one as well.
No,
do you have a favorite quote or saying? I mean, that's how we kind of leave off.
One that I always tell people, and that I think is a real great takeaway for everybody, is something that I took from Reid Hoffman, who is the co-founder of LinkedIn and now a partner at Greylock Ventures, investor, which is permanent beta. And as soon as I read that, I literally put down the draft and I picked up a notepad and I wrote permanent beta and I stuck it on the wall. We are a product in beta, permanently, right? Which is to say, we're never a finished product. We are always changing. We have to always be open to the feedback, to the user feedback, right? We cannot think of ourselves as finished and ready. I love that because it gives you permission to feel never done, to feel like there's always more to learn, which I think is something that everybody needs. If I can leave anybody with anything, is what I would leave them with, which is to think of yourself in permanent beta.
Ever evolving and not fucking around.
That's right.
Awesome. I appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate you.
Cool.
To find out more information, go to jasonfeifer.com. Buy his novel, Mr. Nice Guy. Sign up for the 2 podcast. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.